Hey, what's up, guys? It's Fulker here. I just want to give a shout out to Boogie Bentley, Dauber, and the Indie Kid over at the Talkin VAWLS network on YouTube. Keep doing your thing, guys. Go Vols.
What's going on, guys? This is the Indie Kid coming at you. This is Talkin VAWLS live basketball podcast. Once again, my name's the Indie Kid.
I'm Dauber.
What's going on, man?
Not much. What's happening? Little late night action here.
Little late night action, switching it up. We've been in football heavy mode going forward, and now it's basketball time in Tennessee. Comes Saturday, perfect week with the off week coming up. But as you know, guys, a few of you getting tuned in here a little late night. I know basketball's not everybody's thing along the way, but appreciate you guys that are tuning in. I know some of you are big basketball fans along the way. Share this out. Make sure you hit like. Make sure you hit subscribe along the way. But Tennessee starts off this Saturday. Lenore Ryan exhibition game, and then November 9th, Tennessee Martin, 7 p.m., SEC Network, and then things get rolling from there. But, before we get into anything with it, Dauber, what's your thoughts on the upcoming season? What are you looking for? What are you excited about with this team?
I'd like to progress a little bit more than the team did last year. It was kind of up and down. A ton of talent, a ton of potential, but I think the COVID year, you had some guys that I'm pretty sure were affected by COVID. Fulkerson really regressed. Started out as a conference player of the year candidate, and really he struggled. And then you just had, I think it took Springer and Keon Johnson a while to get going early on. And then those guys finally hit their groove, but it was still a case of who was the alpha, who was the guy on that team last year. I don't think anybody really stood up and took charge of that. The offense kind of sputtered at times too. And that's something that I think this new roster that they've addressed, you're going to move Vescovi over probably, or have him coming off the bench. We'll probably get into a little bit of the lineup. And, you got a couple of good problems to have. But Kennedy Chandler, hopefully this kid comes in and lives up to the hype and all the praise that he's got, lives up to his highlight reel because the kid can play. It's going to be fun to watch. He's very good with the ball, distributing the ball, making things happen for other people. And listen, Justin Powell, the transfer in, that's a guy that I wouldn't sleep on either. I think he could make some things happen. Before he got hurt at Auburn, as a true freshman, he was, I think, played about 10 games and was putting up pretty good numbers. So it's going to be fun to watch. I'm excited for this team to get going. I'd really like to see them play consistent throughout the year, and I'd like them to get that monkey off of Barnes's back and go deep into the postseason.
Yeah, a lot of good points, a lot of good stuff. And you mentioned Powell about how he was. What I liked about him is he's pretty well rounded. Seems like he scored, he rebounded, he assisted there as well. Lots of good stuff. Let's see. Let me see who all's in the chat here. We got first comment, Juan Paul, basketball sucks, not a bit interested. It's a sissy game. Everybody's got their own opinions. We welcome them all. Uncle Allen, what's a basketball? Tim Bradley, hoops. Got Tim hanging out with us. Let's see. Courtney Holland says hi. Dave Bryant. So They chose a thumbnail of Coach Barnes holding his thumb down. November 9th, can't wait. Yeah, same here. Boosted 931. Let's see where we at. Hey, of course I can't click on it. Oh, here we go. All right. As for UT, tough schedule. Yeah, we're going to get into the schedule here in just a few minutes. I had a video earlier in the week where I discussed the schedule, broke it down. I really like the schedule. I'm a full-fledged believer in to be the best. Wait a minute. That's a perfect one right here.
To be the man, you got to beat the man. And I'm saying, woo, right here.
That just played out perfect. Wasn't even planning on it. But to be the best, you got to beat the best. Love the schedule. Chad Kirk, I'm ready for some basketball. The men and women go big orange. Tim Bradley, again, good schedule, though. Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Boosted 931, Kennedy Chandler. There you go, Dauber. You mentioned Kennedy Chandler. I'm sure we're going to mention him quite a bit. Chad Kirk, our bench depth's going to be a lot better this season. I felt like Rick Barnes made that comment last season, too, about bench depth, but
he
didn't work out.
He never got deep into it. And I think
he did.
His hand was kind of forced, though. Some of those guys coming off the bench just – there was such a drop-off. And you get to conference play, and you were really, really seeing the difference. You put Pember out there or even Uros. I've said it quite a bit. He for a 7-footer, he plays very soft. And hopefully he's kind of grown into his role. That's a little ironic to say for a 7-footer, but we've got a couple other guys that I think will hopefully help address the post presence or lack of post presence that we really had last year. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and you talked about Vescovi earlier. Boosted 931 said Vescovi starting. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. I think there's a possibility. I was reading an article a minute ago how Barnes said how much Vescovi had improved this offseason. They were really some high praise for him. And you got to think the guy, in respect, is a sophomore. I mean, he came in.
Oh, he got off the plane.
He graduated early.
Yeah, he got off the plane in a new country and
started.
Ran him out on the court.
Yeah, absolutely. Southern Life, so excited for basketball. Dauber, we got a question. You had the golf ball question, so here's another one. I went to a high school football game last night, and the announcer sounded exactly like you. Is Dauber transitioned to a high school football announcer now, possibly?
No, I'm too busy for that.
Let's see. Got a question here for the Southern Life. Quick question. Y'all think Vescovi will settle into his potential Kenny Chandler run the point and taking some of the pressure off of him, always handle. I think it's huge for him.
Yeah, that's the big key. And I think you saw that even when Vescovi first came in. That was right after Lamonte Turner retired due to his shoulder. They were, I don't even think 10 games into the season. And they moved Josiah James over, had him kind of running the point, and stuff was just not working out. And I think the full plan was to have Vescovi come over kind of whenever he got here and redshirt. But because of the Lamonte Turner deal and all of that, it was an immediate need, and he kind of was forced into that role and kind of made do. He can pass the ball like nobody else. Some of those things, but if I had one complaint about him, and I went to the open scrimmage the afternoon before the Ole Miss football game and watched probably 20, 25 minutes of it. And he did this during that scrimmage as well. He gets up in the air with the ball without knowing what he's going to do sometimes. And that's my one complaint about him. But like we saw in the chat there, I think having a true point guard, letting him slide over to more of a natural position, I think that is going to help. Like catch and shoot, I mean, he and Powell, I think, are going to be Victor Bailey. Can't forget Victor Bailey. Got guys on this team that can shoot the ball. So I think having a true point guard to facilitate the ball movement and start the offense, I think that's going to help Vescovi and honestly take some pressure off of him.
It's big, and I thought at times last year too when Vescovi was playing off the ball, that's where we saw him being more effective. I don't necessarily think he was bad at the point guard, but I don't feel that it was his best position either.
Right.
And I do. If Kennedy Chandler's living up to the hype, I think it's going to be big for Vescovi. It's going to be big for this team because it's funny. This team was, they were rolling. They looked like a Final Four team. And then all of a sudden, Alabama beats them. And I don't know if it exposed something or what happened along the way. But this team never played the same the rest of the way. And, pretty good point here. Got to stay healthy. I know we had decent depth, but one injury in basketball can make a huge difference. Those injuries last year, Fulkerson, like you mentioned, COVID, it was not a good year with COVID. Injuries were happening along the way, and it just never happened at that point. But, you got Chandler, and I know you mentioned it when we were talking about you saw Zakai Zeigler play as well, enrolled early out of New York, was originally 2022, reclassified to 2021. What did you see from him, and what did you think about his game that you saw?
He's tiny. He is a short dude, but he is lightning fast. And while I was sitting there, I think he hit 2 threes and probably like a 12-footer. Really, really quick. So, that's the thing. How deep will Barnes go into this bench? We've rattled off probably 8 or 9 players already, and not even mention Nkamhoua, who saw minutes last year. There are some other guys. It's a good problem to have, but hopefully in the all these practices leading up to the exhibition game and then kicking off into the season, they've got a pretty good idea of a rotation. And I hope they use the early part of the season. Well, not all the early part of the season, because you got a couple big games early, almost right out the gate. But to find a rotation before you hit conference ball.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. Couple good comments. Hope Fulke has senior season dessert. Man, I hope he goes out too. I hope he goes out in style. And you mentioned helping Rick Barnes get to that next level. Man, it'd be nice to see Fulkerson go out too. The guy deserved it.
Oh,
he was just starting to play a little better last year, and then Florida guy took that freaking cheap shot.
I was devastated because I thought that was the last time you saw him on the court as a volunteer.
Yeah. So that's
super glad he decided to come back. If he returns to the 2019-2020 Fulke, that led him to be a possible conference player of the year candidate for last year, but then, just through a couple of injuries and coming off of COVID and all of that, he sort of he struggled, and I think he would be the first to tell you he struggled. I hope he has a solid season, and how great is it to have a guy returning for an extra year like that can be your kind of leader on the floor. And man, if everybody had a motor like him, that's the one thing. The dude's energy, and that's something you saw last year too. He just didn't have that, full tank like you're typically seeing him. Diving around all over the place, all over the floor, throwing his body around, and it really wasn't all there. So it was kind of one of those things you knew something was up.
It's a strange year because you mentioned that energy and what they were doing. It was like at the first of the year, they were having fun. They had that energy. And then all of a sudden it was like they didn't want to be out there. I don't know. And I'm sure it was a weird year not having full capacity crowds. Of course, everybody had to deal with it along the way too, but there were injuries. I don't know. We started seeing it a little bit toward the end of the year, that energy, and then Fulkerson gets cheap shotted against Florida, done for the year. Sucked, but yeah, I want to see the guy come back and have a big year. He's a guy that he's the epitome of a VFL when it comes to Tennessee basketball. Not the greatest Vols basketball player ever, but man, he's just one of those guys that if you're a basketball fan of Tennessee and you don't love Fulkerson, I don't know why you're watching him. But we'll see. I think he's in for a big year. I think he's going to go out in style. Let's see here. Tiffany Phantom, so thrilled to be talking about Vols hoops. Can't wait to see what Deacon Barnes and the guys could do. Me either. And that was one thing in the offseason. We talked about it when this season ended last year that, I don't know, we had some concern, did we not?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we were concerned about it. I think that at that point in time, we examined who was coming back, and it just didn't. Of course, we didn't know Fulkerson was coming back.
Right.
We thought he was done, but we knew Chandler, we knew Victor Bailey, we knew Josiah James, Jordan James, we knew Vescovi, but it was like, I don't know after that. And then, lots of guys left, lots of guys came in, and it was, you hate to see guys go, but I mean, don't you think they had to transform that roster going into this season?
That was something really interesting to watch, kind of in the off season after getting put out by OK State. The evolution of you had picking up a couple guys via the transfer portal. Fulkerson announcing he was coming back. You had the commits. I think Zeigler was one that kind of slipped in there towards the end. Not a lot of noise from him. I think he's a 3-star, but everything I've read about him, he may be one of the best shooters on the team. And then, of course, somebody that we've not mentioned at all is Meshack. He's coming in, and I think 6'4" guard. I think he's going to be one that is he going to be kind of in there vying for some playing time with James and Bailey. He's a top 50 kid. So, Barnes has really transformed Tennessee basketball in that, we had 2 guys drafted in the first round last year. Never happened before. You've got another likely one and done in Kennedy Chandler, and another potential lottery pick in him. If the hype is, if the play on the court matches the hype. I mean, it's something else that where the program was when Rick Barnes came in to where it is now, and it's a destination program for some of these elite players, and that's very exciting to see this progression. We got Donovan in the chat now, and he's talking about the depth of the bench, and yeah, it very well could go 10 deep, but Barnes really doesn't get, and you said that there, 7 or 8. The thing that I think this roster will have to watch is the big guys in foul trouble. You get out there and you get Fulke or Nkamhoua or even some of these young guys, if they're out there playing, they've got to stay on the floor, because we saw last year the lack of post presence, even with guys as athletic as we had last year. Without a true big guy, you're hurting.
Yeah, and you mentioned Chandler, another guy we've not even mentioned, potential lottery pick. I'm not sure if it'll be this year or next, is Brandon Huntley-Hatfield, reclassified to 2021. He was a top 10 player for 22, reclassified to 21, was still a top 20 when they reclassified him. Big guy at 6'10", 246, has some nice touch around the back. He could be a game changer as well.
Yep.
Bringing him in. They brought in Jonas Aedu, originally committed to Marquette. He's out of North Carolina, around the Charlotte area. 6'11", 230.
A lot of the stuff I've seen about him, though, is he needs to get stronger. That he is not quite as physical. And you go back to – and I think this past season, we've talked about it. Fulkerson was reeling from recovering from COVID, had some injuries. He got tossed around a lot. I mean, Fulke's not the biggest guy, but he handles his own with his energy and his, just motor that goes. But you can't get pushed around. And I think Aedu is one that what I'm reading is they want him to get a little bit stronger, get ready for what's going to be tough conference play. It's not like Presbyterian and all these other teams that we play early on. When you get to conference play, you're playing some guys that look like linebackers, man.
Ed is for UT. One was the last UT player to be one and done. Outside of Jaden Springer and Keon Johnson, it was Tobias Harris. That was the last one and done, having a pretty nice career in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
I had a video this week as well, how Tennessee built this roster. I think you've got to have a combination of the one and dones, but you also got to have that combination of guys who's going to be there a few years as well. And I thought this was a really interesting class for Tennessee coming in this year. It ranked, according to 24/7 Sports, it ranked fourth in the SEC. First in the SEC, number 4 overall. Kennedy Chandler, of course, is the big one. He was ranked the number 1 point guard on there. But Brandon Huntley-Hatfield, top 20. You mentioned Mashak. Thing I liked about him as well, the spotlight is not going to be too big for this guy. He played out in California, played the high classification. He was used to playing. I know they went against LeBron's son, against Bronny, with LeBron, D-Wade, Drake. I can't remember if the game was on ESPN or when it was, but it was high profile. It was big time. And I think Mashak was the man that night. Led them to victory over LeBron and D-Wade's kids. Aedu, nice pickup late. And then they had, of course, including Huntley-Hatfield, they had 2 more reclassifications. And we talked about Zeigler earlier, point guard, but also Hanjay Tamba out of Knox Catholic as well. So he reclassified to 2021. He's a big guy. Seems to be kind of I'm not sure how far developed he is. I think he's a redshirt candidate, but he's got size. I've seen where he has a pretty soft touch on him, so it'd be interesting to see. But I could see him being more of a redshirt candidate, a few redshirt candidates along the way. But I think getting those one and done guys, you need them. Plus, you need those guys who's going to be around for a couple years or more. Because I mentioned it too in a video earlier this week. You look at Baylor, that team that won the national championship last year had 4 top 100 guys on it. They didn't have those top 10s. They didn't have those one and dones. It was a built program. And I wonder if that's not the model with college basketball now. It's I think you need your one and dones, but if you look at these Dukes, these Kentuckys, who's loading up on 5 stars, what are they getting out of it? Second, third round, and then that's it. They're not getting any further than these teams that are built for it. So, that's I like what they're building. I really like how they rebuilt this team. And you keep mentioning Justin Powell, and I agree. I think he's a huge pickup for this program. And, if they wanted to go small, I'd be interested to see a lineup of Chandler, Vescovi, Powell, possibly Victor Bailey, possibly Josiah Jordan-James, all 5. If they want to go that small, if you want to keep a Fulkerson or a Huntley-Hatfield, there's a lot of possibilities with this lineup this year.
Yeah, for sure. I think offensively, the things I'm looking for, of course, we've mentioned it. Does Kennedy Chandler live up to the hype? Can he come in as a true freshman and run the offense? Which, all these guys that are, 4-star, 5-star kids, they all play the AAU circuits and, all these big travel teams and like you talked about Meshack out in California. They're all traveling to, this Nike tournament or Under Armour tournament or, wherever. So I think the stage will not be too big for him. Is his game ready? Is he ready mentally and physically? And then again, is Fulkerson going to return to the Fulkerson of 2 seasons ago? Kind of recover from that dip in production and output that we're used to seeing from him. Will you see somebody like Josiah Jordan-James finally kind of break out and emerge? Because you're talking about another 5-star kid right there. And he's kind of, although he's played well, he's not really ever reached that, that hype that I just talked about with Kennedy Chandler. James came in with a lot of hype, and he's kind of, he's played well, but he's not really excelled like you kind of think a 5-star should. And then are you going to see the emergence of, somebody just ball out this year? Somebody like Victor Bailey or Vescovi or even Justin Powell. Have one of those guys come in and just light it up offensively and, not just for a game or two, but consistently night in and night out. Will we have somebody?
With that thought, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. Will somebody come in and, be the guy where you look back at last season's team, probably Keon Johnson or Springer, that's who you're drawing up a play for at the end of a game if you needed a bucket. Who's going to be that guy this year? That's the things to kind of look forward to, especially early in this season. Who Chandler is amazing with the ball and an amazing facilitator. He's a streaky shooter from everything I've seen. He can be hot, but then he can go cold. But I think if he's distributing the ball and making things happen for other players, then he also kind of settles in and finds a shot. So you kind of want him rolling and getting everybody involved because that seems to get him going.
With that said, you're talking about guys, who is your under the radar guy? Who is your guy we are not talking about that'll step up and make a big contribution to people? You've mentioned a lot of guys right now. If you had to pinpoint one guy, who is your under the radar guy? Who is it?
I mean, I think it could be Zeigler. Just because what I saw in the very, 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 very small sample size of that open practice, just his quickness, and they were going, orange versus white, and it looked to be split pretty evenly. I can't even remember who was guarding him, but he hit, like I said, I think 2 threes. And one just out, just a couple steps inside the 3-point line. I think if the bench goes that deep and he sees some time, I'm interested to see if his hot shooting is there.
Interesting pick. I like it. Couple points I put up here. Calvin Corm said James is underrated. You mentioned that. Did everything well, solid all-around player. Yeah, he was kind of the first 5-star that got in the fold under Barnes. Nice player. I wouldn't say he's lived up to the 5-star billing, and I don't mean that any disrespect by that, but he is a guy. He kind of does it all. And I'm excited to see what he does more this year. I think he's going to be more of that leader. We've talked about Mashak, talked about him. I don't know what his offensive game is. I think he's more of that athlete / defender now.
I think he's Barnes went after him because of his defense, I believe.
And on that point, we need consistency, solid defense. I agree, Tiffany, definitely.
Well, that's the thing. We've kind of talked a lot about the offense. That's a question about this defense. Can these guys elevate to the stifling style of defense that Rick Barnes' teams have played, especially the last couple of years? Considering you've lost your one-time defensive player of the year in Pons, and you lost a couple of really stellar athletes in Keon Johnson, Jaden Springer, which, those guys made so many plays on defense that, helped side or got beat and then blocking a ball from behind or, just super athletic plays. Will this team be able to step up? And I think they're going to score. I think you've got plenty of guys that can put the ball in the bucket. Are you going to be able to defend?
And mentioning that, you mentioned about Pons leaving, boosted 931. I'm curious who our defensive guy Pons gone. I'm curious to see who it is too. I'm kind of wondering if it's not James. I think his length. I think he could play well with him. We talked about under the radar guys. You said Zeigler, a guy I keep reading about having a big off season, really stepping it up. I don't think we've mentioned him yet. It's Olivier Nkamhoua. He's getting a lot of praise this offseason from what I'm seeing, and I'm wondering how much he possibly contributes. I think he could be a big guy for him down low.
At the scrimmage, he looked like he had not necessarily trimmed down, but he didn't bulk up, but it looked like he lost some of the roundness, and it was more defined. And he was moving very well. You got to remember, he was kind of not really a project guy, but a guy that they were coming in hoping to polish up. I don't think he had played a lot of organized basketball. Really athletic guy. He's from
Finland.
Finland, yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, he could be a break. There are a lot of guys that really could break out and, become either an offensive threat or kind of be your lockdown kind of glue guy on defense. You talked about James. I think James is. We saw his length and athleticism on display when I'm pretty sure he led the team in rebounding overall, and then specifically in offensive rebounding last year.
Yeah, rebounding numbers were kind of interesting. I know I kind of ran the team numbers, got them in front of me. They were, man, so many categories. They had some weird stuff, like they were 137th in rebounds. I think Josiah Jordan-James, I think he was around 6 rebounds per game, the leading rebounder. And then you had Pons, you had Fulkerson. Other than that, you didn't have anybody over 4 rebounds per game. It was kind of low. Field goal percentage 180, assist to turnover was 71st. They had a 1.19. Turnovers, they ranked tied for 213th in the nation. Now, part of that, I don't know if that was total or not. When I kind of ran the numbers, they did play more games than some other teams. So that could be more. Free throw percentage, they ranked 56th. It's right at 75%, so that's not terrible. 3-point percentage, 201st. That is what we have hit on right there. Justin Powell, Vescovi, Calvin Corum made a good point here. Team speed should improve this year. I based on what I've seen from Chandler, based on what you're saying about Zeigler, they got 2 guys who could pick them up and set them down when it comes to getting up and down the court. And, it's kind of like in football with these high-powered offenses. I think the days of that slow-down half-court offense, I think they're past. And I think that's held this team back at times. But I don't know that Barnes has always had the pieces to run that high-profile, high-tempo offense. I'm curious to see what they do based on what you watched of the scrimmage. What kind of pace were they running?
It wasn't super up tempo. Kennedy Chandler kind of tweaked his ankle or something, and was kind of gimping up and down the court. And they had a couple of officials out there. I mean, it was game situation. Barnes actually walked out on the court and stopped it to pull him out. So I think that shows how critical he is to this team, because he was actually waving Barnes off. He's like, "No, I'm good," as he kind of limp. And I think it was nothing big, that probably just retaped him and got him back out there. But it wasn't super fast, but I mean, they weren't walking it up the court. It's hard to tell. Like I said, I only watched 20-25 minutes, but there were a lot of good things I saw. A lot of guys getting after it, and I don't know if it's just because they actually had some fans in there, and first little taste of it this season. But
couple good points here. Say another one from Calvin Corum, true point guard this year, will free up 2 deadly shooters. If you got to line up with Chandler, and then you're running Vescovi, and you're running Powell,
or even Victor Bailey,
man.
Or Victor Bailey.
Yeah, I hadn't even got Victor Bailey. Absolutely, because he's streaky. I mean, if he's on, he can shoot the lights out. And then we talked about this before we went on air. We said, we'll wait till it's on air. And here's the question. Boosted 9:30. Who will you all starting 5 be this year? So before we get in that work the 40-minute mark, we got 61 viewers. Man, it'd be cool if we could push this up to 100. Maybe we don't get there tonight, but for future episodes. Hopefully we can start building that. Baseball started out low last year. Of course, the team wearing it out helped out. Hopefully we can push that up. But not bad for first episode. Be cool if we get to 100. But anyhow, starting five. Who you got?
Man, it's tough. I think you're probably going to see James, Fulkerson, Bailey, Chandler, and probably I'd say Vescovi to begin the year. But I think you may see some of those freshmen or Powell as transfer pushing Bailey and Vescovi. I'd seen a tweet earlier today. Let's see. Allen Houston came to practice today, and I guess their team motto, INAM. It's not about me. So I think if they can, take that to heart and go, it's not going to matter who starts, because I think that you have 8, 9, 10 people deep, and you're splitting those minutes up, and it's not about how many points I get, but how well the team does. I think if they can go by that, there's a pretty big ceiling for this team. Preseason top 15, I think right at 15, I think maybe 14 in a couple places. It's going to be about playing well up to conference play, and then having that solid roster and those first couple of guys off the bench established. And somebody hit it earlier, staying healthy. If we have some injuries to Chandler or Fulkerson, that could be huge. But I don't know. Who's your starting five?
Chandler, Vescovi, James, Fulkerson, and Brandon Huntley-Hatfield.
Okay.
That's my five, because I'm throwing that 6'10", 246 in.
I think Huntley-Hatfield definitely is going to – he may, by the time conference play rolls around, be starting. If not, I think he's one of the first guys off the bench. And especially in games where you've got 1 to 2 bigs that you're going up against, I think he's going to be out there.
If not Huntley-Hatfield, based on what we're reading, I could see Kama starting. Just based on, I think that Bailey, I think he comes off the bench, at least to start.
Mm-hmm.
I could see Powell coming off the bench. I'm interested on Powell. I could see it either way with him. I'd say, same with Huntley-Hatfield. I'd see it with him. Something with him tells me he starts, but I could be wrong on that. I think Vescovi, Chandler, James, and Fulkerson. I just can't see how any of those guys aren't starting.
Well, it's funny. You've got, I think Chandler and Fulkerson and James are probably in there regardless. And then I think the other 2 spots, you've got like 5 other guys that you could plug in. And really, like I said earlier, it's about finding that dynamic and that 5 that meshes well together and is going to provide a solid offense, but also be able to defend. So I think it's going to be interesting seeing these first couple of games, seeing the exhibition this weekend. We talked about the schedule. You have the exhibition game, UT Martin, and then you've got a tough game against ETSU. Followed up by heading to Connecticut for the Hall of Fame Tip-Off Classic, where you got Villanova and then possibly UNC or Purdue. So that's coming out the gate pretty hot right there.
I think ETSU will be interesting with all their drama they had. But
yeah,
it's not basically the second weekend. It gets real.
Gets real quick.
Because looking at it, Villanova's ranked preseason 4, Purdue 7, North Carolina 19, Tennessee 18. That's according to the AP coaches poll, or AP poll. I'm sorry. So they're all 4 top 20.
Well, and then you've got a couple of catch your breath games against Tennessee Tech and Presbyterian, but then that game going out to Colorado, I think is going to be tough.
Yeah.
You got Tennessee Tech at Madison Square Garden in the Jimmy V Classic. That's going to be that's going to be a tough game.
Yeah. I'm curious about them because let me see if they're preseason ranked here. They are not preseason. I'm interested about them because their coach left, some of the players, so I don't know. They've been stout for the last few years. Almost had a national championship 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another good game.
And then, another kind of catch your breath, UNC Greensboro, USC upstate.
I don't know, man. Greensboro, though. Greensboro's tough.
I mean, they usually bring it. Get to watch them against the Bucks in the SoCon.
Yeah, so, that's normally. The last few years it's been one of those two.
But
Wofford's been pretty good too. But
yeah,
Greensboro, they were I think they won the conference last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Then you've got big in-state rivalry game against Memphis, and that's actually going to be in Nashville. So that is, to me, that's kind of a big game for in-state recruiting. And then you follow that up with a game against Arizona, who is typically kind of they're a college blue blood basketball team and typically play pretty well. And then you're right into conference play. So you've got 2 sets of kind of easier games sandwiched by some pretty tough games against some preseason ranked teams. And then you're right into conference play. You open that up against Bama. Surely Petty isn't at Bama anymore, is he?
I think he's gone.
Seems like he's been there like 14 years. Of course.
Well, you can't forget on non-conference. Once you get in conference, you've got Texas squeezed in there.
Yeah.
In Austin. That's going to be an emotional game.
It
for
will.
numerous reasons. And, of course, Texas is preseason ranked number 5. So that's a big one, too. But, man, I love the schedule. I love it. I just don't get excited when if you just play a Tennessee Tech or someone like that for all of your non-conference. That was kind of the Conzo Martin way. Just play a bunch of bozos and then you fluff up your record, and then come conference, you're not prepared because you haven't played anybody.
A tough non-conference schedule sets you up for conference play, which then, hopefully if you've played well and say you go 500 or just above 500 in those games, it sets you up for the postseason because that's the caliber of talent you're going to be playing in postseason tournament. So,
you mentioned the interesting point about the Tennessee-Memphis game, about that being big for in-state recruiting. Holy crap, man. They're getting killed right now on the trail.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. I was reading an article earlier about it here on Rocky Top Insider talking about their recruiting. It was actually from the mailbox. Here they were talking about it. And just let's see. Let me go down and find it here again. They asked, is the NIL hurting Tennessee in recruiting? And the guys on Rocky Top Insider, they said not really. But, you look where Tennessee has struck out here recently. Jalen Hood, Schifano, it kind of started there. He picked Indiana over Tennessee. This past week, Dylan Mitchell, Tennessee looked really good with him at one point. Texas, picked Texas over Tennessee. You had Julian Phillips out of here in Fort Mill, South Carolina, picked LSU over Tennessee. Talkin VAWLS, Tennessee was in good shape with him at one point, heavily trending towards Kentucky. And then for the Ole Miss game, they had Chandler Jackson out of Memphis in town. Looked like they had momentum going with him. Visited Florida State this past weekend. He's supposed to announce tomorrow. It's heavily believed he's going to Florida State. They've got B.J. Edwards in the fold. Of course, they did have some reclassifications that helped out, but I don't know if it's NIL. I mean, because these guys have recruited. It's not that they can't recruit, and of course, they did lose 2 assistant coaches. I wonder how big of a difference that makes. I mean, you got 2 guys who are now head coaches, Ken English, Desmond Oliver. Those were losses. I mean, I like who they added. And Clark and Gainey, I think it's 2 good assistants, but still yet, you lost those relationships along the way. And
let me throw this out there to you. How much longer is Barnes' contract for?
What, 3 years?
Was that the length of it?
I know
he got an extension.
I think it was more of was it? I don't think it extended. Well, hang on a minute. Maybe it extended the years, but didn't increase the pay. It was one of them. But he's around 3 years, I believe.
There's not a whole lot of time left. I've thought this, and I don't know if I've mentioned it to you, but I was talking to a guy at work about it. What do you think? They lost Kim English. I think Kim English is an up-and-coming coach. I think he goes and gets his feet wet at Mason and, is the head coach, is the guy. If he has some success there, what do you think about bringing him back to be the head coach when Barnes leaves?
Good possibility. Good option. Somebody asked me on one of the videos I did this week, who do I think the next coach is? And that he would be my option over Desmond Oliver. I mean, if Oliver goes to ETSU and has big, I mean, he could have some options. But I think the one thing English has, he's younger.
Yeah.
Both of them excellent coaches, excellent recruiters. Both got good opportunities at really good mid-major programs in Mason and ETSU. And, I've thought about that too. If English goes off and has that success that I think he will at Mason, he has to be a big-time candidate once Barnes hangs up.
And Barnes likes him, so it would kind of be one of those that there's not much of a transition if the team is still rolling. But like you just alluded to, got to pick up the recruiting for next season, because right now they're lagging behind a little bit. Of course,
and maybe it's a case of portal for them.
Yeah, could be.
Good thing with the basketball recruiting, you're going to have your signing day, your signing period coming up in November for that, which is just around the corner. They got B.J. Edwards, top 100, Knox Catholic in the fold. Good point guard, real good pickup. I'm excited about him. But they need more because, I mean, you're looking at Fulkerson, super senior. He's definitely gone. Chandler, you got to think he's one and done. I think it's possible with Huntley-Hatfield. We'll see with him. I'm not sure how that reclassifying will work. Maybe he's a multi-year guy. I still wonder at some point with Josiah Jordan-James. I mean, if he has a good year, does he test the waters? Well, the good thing with him is he has not tested the waters, so he can go through the process and come back. And you always got to factor in. Is he super senior?
He's listed as a senior. Did he lose a year coming from? Yeah, he set a year here.
He set a year. Yeah, so he would probably be a super. So I mean, they could lose 4 or 5 guys. So how do they replace them? You got to think. I mean, they added Powell through the portal. I could see portal again next year as well because, how does Zeigler progress? What do they do with him this year? Edwards coming in. I mean, you got to think he probably steps in with Chandler, but I think the portal's an option for them based on unless they can close with someone in this early signing period. But then you've got the spring signing period where they can add as well on it. We'll see where they go with it. I'm not too down on it. I'm really surprised, but Barnes made mention about the NIL that players have got to be careful. I got to wonder what's going on there with NIL and going against these teams. Are they out recruiting him with NIL or maybe it's not a factor? I don't know. I did read where he said some recruits ask about it, some don't ask about it. So,
right.
So it's kind of big. But, yeah, that Tennessee-Memphis game, that'll be big for recruiting. They go against each other a lot. Based on the schedule, we've talked about the non-conference. Of course, the conference schedule, it is what it is. For Tennessee basketball to have a successful year, what is their destination for this season?
Honestly, I think between a 5 and an 8 seed in the NCAA tournament, that's a realistic. And then you hope you're playing your best basketball at that point. And who knows? I'd love to be wrong and them to catch fire and play into a 2 or 3 seed or a 1 seed. That'd be ridiculous. But realistically, 5 to 8 seed and making a run to maybe Sweet 16 or Elite 8 again.
I think if you get the point guard play that we're anticipating, I think if that post game does what we anticipate, because I think it'll be much improved. A lot of that's going to depend and hinge on Fulkerson. I think this is a second weekend team. And who knows? Maybe, it's kind of a melting pot of players, the way they put it together. I really like how they've constructed this roster. I'm curious to see how it meshes, but I think they've got better shooting. We've mentioned this, and you mentioned this the other night on our football podcast or our football show, but you kind of compared basketball with football, and we talked about it last year. Who's the alpha going to be? We didn't see the alpha last year. I think Springer and Keon kind of took that over. I don't know that they were supposed to, but they took the ball and ran with it. Didn't get a lot of help once they took it over. Who's the alpha this year? What do you think? Me personally, I think your alpha, man, I got to go with the obvious here. I'm going to say the freshman. I'm going to say Kennedy Chandler's got that alpha in him.
I think Fulkerson coming back being a 6th year, it is his last rodeo. And that guy bleeds orange. It means a lot to play for his home state university. I think he's going to take a lot of responsibility and a lot of that that role as a leader on the floor. You know, and like I said, maybe a little bit of his energy and motor is back this year, and it rubs off on some of the other guys.
Man, if they could get back to, like you mentioned, that 2019-2020 season, man, he carried them down the stretch. I mean, he put that team on his back, putting up big, big numbers. That'd be game, awesome.
That game in Kentucky.
Yeah.
He was ridiculous in that game.
He was, and he didn't have a lot of help with that team. I mean, Jordan Bowden disappeared his senior year. Hated it. Loved Jordan Bowden. Like you mentioned earlier, Lamonte Turner went out. Fulkerson really put that team on his shoulder. We actually went up, as right before COVID, they played up at South Carolina, went and watched them, and he carried them that night. And we talked about Vescovi earlier. He couldn't. I don't think they scored a point the last 5 minutes of the game. They just kept turning it over. It's crazy how it went. But, yeah, I think I'm excited. I'm excited about the season. I think there's big things in store. You know, people wonder if Rick Barnes is kind of on his – I think what Rick Barnes showed me was if he would have stayed pat with that team after last season, just kind of added what he had and didn't do much to it, I would have had concerns about him. But the fact that he went out and totally rebuilt that roster, that shows me that, number one, I said at the end of the season, I said, Rick Barnes has got to go look in the mirror. He did. He looked in the mirror. He looked at what was working, what wasn't. You know, he had those tough conversations. It sucks, but I think this program had to do it. That tells me it's a guy that this guy ain't ready to hang it up yet. He's still hungry and wanting to get it done.
I think, like I said earlier, I hope this team can help get that monkey off his back. You know, he wants to. When somebody says Rick Barnes, they say, "Oh yeah, you know, great coach, 700 plus wins, but he never could get it done in the postseason."
Yeah, it'd be awesome. Be awesome if he could get that done. I mean, especially this Tennessee athletics as a whole is really thriving right now. Tiffany Phantom mentioned earlier the Vols soccer won the SEC East today. Hey, man, and that's something I like about Danny White coming in. When I reviewed what he did at Central Florida, it was a well-rounded program. He had the luxury of taking over a guy like Barnes in basketball. Knows how to get it done, but like you said, it's always you can't win the big one. So I like to say, a part of me wonders if the inevitable, not the inevitable, if the unthinkable happened, Tennessee won a national championship, does Barnes go out on top at that point? But, you know, that's crazy talk. I know. But, I mean, if all the pieces gel, I'm really curious to see how far this team can go, what they can do in the tournament. But we've kind of discussed schedules, rebuilding the team, recruiting, everything. Anything else you want to add before we wrap this thing up?
Well, that's that. I'll just say, like you just said, the pieces. It's going to be interesting and fun to see what pieces and how, not just how they go together, but what pieces are in play and the guys that they're putting out on the court. You're kind of your starters, your guys off the bench. And how they move those around, what rotation that they get. Because, I mean, there's a lot of talent on this roster. And really, there's a lot more talent than there are minutes right now. So it's finding those guys that are not just going to give you quality minutes, but consistently give you quality minutes. Because you don't want to have to keep shuffling guys in and out and moving stuff around. And, 10 games in, you've had 7 different starting lineups. That's not what you want. You want to have guys that you can count on contributing, guys that know their role coming off the bench and are successful knowing that. Victor Bailey is a good example of that. He's a guy that Streaky, yeah. But he came off the bench, and if he was on, he was on. So it definitely is going to be interesting and fun. I'm ready for him to tip it off and get going and see it all come together.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. Good points. Let's say before we get out of here, let's see here. Make sure you check out the I'm not as good at this stuff as Boogie, I'll be honest. I got it going across the bottom here, guys. Make sure you check out that merchandise. If you're interested in Talkin VAWLS merchandise, t-shirts, hats, hoodies, beanies along the way.
Got the basketball stuff too. Got the basketball logo.
That's right. That's right. Let me see if I can maybe find anything here. No, I'm not good enough on that, but we'll get improved on that.
It's
as we go along the way.
It's right there. There's a hoodie with that on it.
Yep, right where Dauber pointed at right there. That's the Talkin VAWLS basketball logo. We got hoodies, we got t-shirts with that on it. There's a little bit of everything in that store. So make sure you check it out, guys. Anything you take, we appreciate it. But we'll kind of get together here soon. Of course, we're still, this weekend we'll be off from football. Tennessee is off this weekend. Not only does the team get an off week, but the Talkin VAWLS crew, we get a much-deserved weekend off as well, 8 weekends in. So I'm sure we're going to enjoy that. Of course, yesterday, big news, not going to expand on it, but Harrison Bailey transferring out. Boogie made a video on that. If you want to hear about that, make sure you check out his video on that. There'll be more stuff going forward this weekend, I'm sure. I'm sure more news is going to be coming out as well with football. We'll be live Tuesday night. I think the plan is, fortunately, last night, Indy Kids team, I'm not the head coach. I'm just an assistant. We rolled. We're championship bound next Wednesday night. So I think the plan is, and this is subject to change, Tuesday night, 9 p.m. We'll be live with our usual Talkin VAWLS live. Boogie will keep you posted on that along the way as well. And then Dauber and I, we'll kind of get together and determine when we're going to do basketball. Preseason game Saturday, try to drop a video just to recap that, and then we'll have a couple of weeks till the opener. But we'll definitely keep you updated along the way. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. This is the Talkin VAWLS podcast. Oh, here we go. He's Dauber. I'm the Indy Kid. Thanks for tuning in. You guys take care. Stay safe. And in the words of Boogie Bentley, go Big Orange.